Do I have the capacity, or does it feel that I have the space to ask to stop at any time? So consent could be withdrawn at any point of time, and it needs to feel safe and sane to do so.
Sometimes there are expectations on a man's role, on a female world, but even in the queer world.
Yeah.
Tops and bottoms, etc. Like, I wonder what the difficulties there are for people around seeing that media and then what they think they have to do.
There's sometimes this real pressure that folk need to enjoy a certain thing to be able to get that person, or to be able to be intimate with another person, where in fact it goes against what they're actually wanting or needing or consenting to.
I have a little story for you to hear that I think is kind of reflective of this chat today. I had a young client kind of in his young 20s, kind of exploring confidence, kind of self-esteem issues. And what he said to me one day was he had a lot of guilt around not getting sex right. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he said to me that he blamed himself for ejaculating really quickly at the start of the relationship. And then we kind of explored, what was going on at the time. And he said it was his first relationship, first partner, never had sex before.
No wonder.
But he was comparing himself to porn. And I'm guessing that is an ongoing pattern that you might hear, or that we hear as counsellors, in terms of really holding this heavy weight of expectation. And it really making you feel shit.
This real sense of comparison, particularly around media such as porn, or whether it be Instagram feeds, in terms of, how someone is navigating their own relationship, or how much intimacy is within their relationship, but it doesn't paint a real picture.
And for this guy, just getting that normalization of, lots of guys go through that. Your body has to get used to it. You're probably not used to being around a female naked, and the horny, the arousal level going up. And that being okay.
And first time, exactly right. First time, I imagine your arousal would be quite high. It's all novel, it's all new, it's all exciting. Exactly right, normalizing it.
So today, to kind of spin all this back around, we're talking about sexpectations, and we've got Daniel Pietro, who's our sexologist and one of our counsellors here at Safe Place Therapies. Thanks, Daniel, for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
And my name's Stuart Cheverton. I'm the owner of Safe Place Therapy, and we're breaking down barriers in terms of talking about sex, talking about mental health, and really opening up the doors for people to know they're not alone in the issues that they might be going through, but also cementing a spot for people to come talk about this stuff in a more safer way, because as soon as you name it, it then becomes easier to talk about it and process. And we really want to be in people's corners and share really important information. So if you're listening in, tuning in, please subscribe, please like, please share with someone that might also think this is cool and interesting. But first, before we jump in, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and they are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So let's get straight off. I think an interesting thing that maybe people are aware of is some of the terminology changes, or kind of words in kind of legislation related to consent, and this new term of enthusiastic consent. Do you want to explain that?
So enthusiastic consent is this real sense about this keenness when giving an okay, or keenness of agreeing to do something. So, consent had been seen in the past as perhaps the sense around once someone says yes to it, or once someone says that they're okay with it, that is a tick box that is checked off there. But enthusiastic consent looks a lot differently. It's very much an emotive based thing, right? So, for instance, an older way of having consent is, if someone was to ask, would you be willing to engage in this with me? They may go, oh, yeah. And because of that, someone may think that they've provided consent, whereas enthusiastic consent is, I'd love to do that. Yeah, there's a sense of real keenness that I'm with you in this experience.
Because I guess the background of that need for enthusiastic consent is a lot of people might feel obligated.
Yes.
Obligated because it's an expectation of the relationship, or maybe that their partner or the person that they're engaging with sexually needs this, so I have to say yes.
Yes.
But this needs to come from an internal keen yes.
Yes, yes. And it needs to be safe, sane, and consensual. And what I mean by that is that in my work, I use a lot of this. So safe being that, am I in an environment that feels safe, that I don't feel threatened to do something, or that there's a backlash if I don't do what the other person is asking of me. So firstly, the environment and the situation needs to feel safe. If it's not safe, check in with yourself. Am I actually consenting to this? No, sane. So that being, is this coming off a emotional dysregulated state, right? Am I on any substances where I can't give a clear answer? Yeah. And I may think differently the next day. And consensual in the sense about, consent is something that is ongoing. So am I getting the check-ins? Do I have the capacity, or does it feel that I have the space to ask to stop at any time? So consent could be withdrawn at any point of time, and it needs to feel safe and sane to do so.
Because, there might be moments where a trigger occurs.
Yes.
There might be something that's uncomfortable from one party, and that might not mean no, let's stop the whole thing. It might actually be a pause, but having those avenues that is okay, but also seeing your partner respect that, and actually seeing them pull back and be okay with that, builds that safety, builds also that connection that we're solid and this is safe what we're doing.
Yeah. And always checking in with yourself, am I do I feel like I could wholeheartedly accept what's being offered to me? Yeah. And that I could allow, because the beauty about consent is that I'm allowing someone access, right? Although I'm giving a gift to someone around that. So, am I giving that wholeheartedly? And if I'm not, checking in and perhaps saying, what, I'm just not feeling 100% on this. I'd love to explore this at another time, though, or talk about this at another time.
And we could go down many different rabbit holes. So I guess the beauty of what we're trying to create with this channel is open discussion, and we might go down different rabbit holes, but also having a little bit of structure. So today is around sexpectations. So sexpectations that we might build up in our own head through comparison, but also maybe expectations that we receive externally, and that might be socially, that might be gender-based, that kind of get in the way of communicating our needs, but also being okay with our partner about exploration.
And I see a lot of folk that come into my room that talk about comparisons, whether that be on Instagram and witnessing other partnerships or other people who are living single lives and, getting a certain amount of intimacy. And the person starts comparing in terms of, well, why isn't my relationship like this? Or why am I living this single life like this? I mean, that weighs a lot on a person. And it's really, I guess, putting the lens on that this perhaps is just being shown for clicks. Right? That this isn't painting perhaps a reality. Well, this might not be the exact reality of this person.
Maybe let's start on those external expectations that people might see in media, or what the common assumptions are that sex should look like.
So, a lot of clients that come into my room talk about that, they see folk that have a lot of sexual exploration, right? That they're trying new things, and, sex has now become such a popular thing in media, and, same as kinks and fetishes. So, that they're open to exploring those, but that's not for everyone. Different strokes for different folks, I like to say. So, there's sometimes this real pressure that folk need to enjoy a certain thing to be able to get that person or to be able to be intimate with another person, where in fact it goes against what they're actually wanting or needing or consenting to.
Even down to a young person or someone who hasn't had a whole lot of sex, you know, watching porn or maybe hearing stories or seeing movies and things, there's assumptions there around the duration of sex.
Yes.
You know, don't want to lean too far into gender here, but sometimes there are expectations on a man's role, on a female world, but even in the queer world, tops and bottoms, etc. Like, I wonder what the difficulties there are for people around seeing that media and then what they think they have to do.
Well, yeah, it paints a really poor picture, right, in terms of what it then looks like bringing that into the real world. You know, a lot of folk don't know that there's a lot of stopping, there's a lot of pausing. You know, that's a lot of time for sex to be going on for, or intimacy to be going on for. For a lot of folk, that's quite overstimulating. Yeah, and a lot of people don't perhaps sit with the idea of, if someone was touching my body for that long with all these different tactile sensations, what would that actually feel like? And it's just kind of sitting with that concept of, what would that actually be like?
And yeah, you might touch yourself through masturbation or kind of self-play, but it's a very different thing for someone else to do that. And then I guess too, you know, media is changing, and, you know, there are more representations of different body types. But if you watch a certain kind of porn or see a certain gender a certain way, or, you know, attracted in a certain way, and then you have this beautiful partner who might look a bit different naked, I think there could be a displacement. What I mean by displacement is there's an issue over there of you don't look right, or you don't meet what I have in my head, and then maybe them not getting aroused or having anxiety, but it's the problem is them talked about the other person. And
rather than it being about, that's right, rather than it not being about, what is my role in this? Because I've had so many orgasms to this one type of material, this one type of body, no wonder I can't do anything else. Right? But it leaves that person quite limited.
And they're not tapping into the anxiety of, maybe, you know, I'm seeing these guys, for instance, who are erect, are ready to go, are just jumping into it. But, you know, some people need time to get aroused, to build comfortability, to get used to the other person's body.
I mean, for vulva owners, there's quite a process in terms of the states of arousal that happen there. Right. And there really needs to be time to be able to sit. And intimacy I always describe as a multisensory thing, right? It's not just tactile. What are we hearing from our partner? You know, what are we smelling here? What is it that we're feeling on our skin? You know, even just kissing, tasting. So it's a multifactorial thing here. And a lot of people just think it's perhaps an experience of, you know, we just have our bodies together and off we go, rather than taking time and just being explorative around it.
And I think then part of the initial reflection for anyone engaging with sex, either at a start or you've been doing it for a while, is what happens for you? What's your arousal like? What are you interested in? What are you scared of that might play out that you need to communicate when these different things happen? And, you know, sometimes talking about sexual interests that are, you know, perceived as outside of the quote unquote normal, they'll always say, what is norm? You know, that could be a really frightening thing to bring up, that you have a sexual interest that may be seen as taboo or not within that societal norm. And I always invite this sense about really kind of prefacing it with a, you know, I'm feeling quite anxious about naming this. I'd love some just empathy around this and some curiosity. And then talking about their interest. Why would it be great to do it with that person rather than generalizing it? And then just exploring. So, is that something that you would be interested in? You know, what would that look like to you? Because again,
if you're having that experience with someone else, you're not doing it to them. This is an experience that you're sharing in.
Because there's a real jarring bubbling of desire, or oh, this is nice, not seeing that in the media, or maybe having a partner who's never done that before, or it feels different.
Yes.
It's very hard to go in and communicate that.
Yes. Instances in media such as porn, as you've named, they don't show the consent part. They don't sign the actors signing contracts and pre-negotiating what it all looks like. So that element gets missed out, and it doesn't paint a picture as to what exploring other sexual interests may actually look like in real life.
Kind of mind-blowing thing that I often say when there are issues with a couple or someone building anxiety around sex and penetration specifically is saying, maybe take penetration off the table. What do you think about that? And it's interesting the reaction certain clients give. And usually the line is, I didn't think we could do that.
And why is it so important? That's my next question I always ask. Okay, so why is this so important to you? What does it mean to both of you? So I really try and identify what is the meaning for the relationship behind this. Is it that we're following a gendered role here, or is it that this is just what we prefer in our intimate experiences?
And it could feel like this feels an obligation because of the other partner, and I feel, or historically it's felt like I had to do that for them. Or sometimes it's actually like I follow the recipe and that's part of the recipe. And if we follow that, we're good from A to Z. But if you don't have that as the last step,
and I ask a very similar question. I say, what happens if it doesn't lead to penetration? What would that be like? And, is there kind of this goal? Sometimes sex can feel very goal orientated rather than explorative and pleasure based. Pleasure based is something where there's curiosity, right? It's novel. We're trying new things. But again, we're always checking in. Consent's hot. How does this feel to you? Are you comfortable with this? And also helping your partner being guided in that experience too can be quite an erotic experience.
If listeners are tuning into this and their brain is being blown right now in terms of penetration off the table, I wonder then what reassuring things that they kind of need to hear to then move into a different space of what next potentially.
So what is the connection? So how do I connect with you in an intimate experience? Because for a lot of folk, they may say, I just love spending this quality time with you naked and just exploring your body. But one person may just have the assumption that this is what my partner is needing or wanting from this, where actually it's the complete opposite. It's just this carved out space of time.
And I think too, penis owners specifically, there might be this internal urgency of, oh shit, I'm only going to be hard for so long. I can't linger in this space of, foreplay or kind of build up. We have to rush to penetration. Otherwise it's not going to work.
And I work a lot with my individual clients and partnerships around, I'm not sure if I can say the word, but soft pain play, right? Where, there's really a lot of points here on your penis, particularly if soft, that's quite arousing. And I really help guide clients on what that's like. And I've got sex education tools in my space that I use for that. And it can be quite mind-blowing for a lot of people that I could actually have a pleasurable experience with a soft peen.
And partners of a penis owner
are surprised by that too.
Surprised by that. But seeing a soft penis, there might be this kind of shame or, oh my God, they're not into me. When in actual fact, you can be still aroused. You still can be into the other person. Just not be hard.
And you could still even ejaculate with a soft peen. You could still experience an orgasm with a soft peen. And sometimes there could be a lot of confusion with that as well, because again, media, it just shows that ejaculation and orgasm only comes from having a hard penis.
Those external expectations and kind of obligations that people feel even before they step into a sexual space kind of maps out what they need to do, but they actually don't really need to do that.
And again, what happens is assumptions.
Yep.
It's assumptions being made in terms of what needs to be done rather than it being a collaborative experience. So how am I opening up this conversation? How am I talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people just do rather than talking with.
Yeah.
But when we do, we're doing something to another person, not with another person. And there's a big difference in that, particularly around consent.
Yeah, good distinction. I had a client share that they are very communicative and they need to share what they need and play that out so it feels safe and it feels not just consensual, but they need to know what's happening for them. Their partner or certain partners dismiss that though, or what they sometimes say is that turns off the desire or I need to let my body talk. And I'm wondering what you would say to that.
Yeah, I mean, again, desire is built on novel experiences, right? And that really kind of keeps the flames of desire going. But for consent, right? Talking about it in terms of an experience, okay, but what happens if I created a scene with you? So, if we talked about erotic scenes together, and I talk about this, and maybe this is something that the viewers here can kind of reflect on if you are in partnership or just reflecting by yourself here. So if I was to create an erotic scene with my partner or with someone, what would that look like? And, how does that appear for them if you are partnered? What would that sound like to you? And really kind of talking about it in such a fantasy-based way. And that's hot. That creates something novel because, maybe my partner doesn't speak to me about fantasy and it feels kind of rule-based. But in that, we're really building consent in fantasy. As well. So that if we do play that out, we know exactly what's going on. We know exactly where the limits are. And then we come back and we check in with that fantasy. Just because we've set up a fantasy once doesn't mean, again, as I say, consensual, it's ongoing. So continually checking back in.
I guess there might be an underlying assumption that takes out the novelty, or it feels very, again, recipe based. But we're talking about conversations where it's not like, right, we're going to follow this recipe today and
No.
it actually could be something you do way down the track. But it's a chat, maybe over a glass of wine or a coffee, where that can be separate. And therefore, it's communicated. It might build arousal, sure.
Yeah.
But it's actually about both parties knowing what they're signing up for.
Yeah, exactly right. And by creating a bit of a scene, that's a really erotic experience. And talking about why it's so hot. And, I could be using explicit language here, but, talking about, so I would find it so sexy if I saw you come in like this and then you crawl towards me or whatever that may be, right? And then how does that sound to you? Yeah, that sounds great. Or, not the crawling bit, but that other where you said before, great. And it starts by talking about intimacy. It promotes further intimacy and it promotes desire and arousal.
Yeah. And what I really like, what you did there is if you're maybe not into something or it doesn't spark some desire, actually still going back to this would be hot.
Yes.
And I think that encouragement and not, quick dismissal or shutting down.
Yes.
Because if a partner comes to you with a, hey, what do you think about? It takes a lot of courage and vulnerability.
Yeah. And I always talk, and great point, because I always talk about the positive affect, which means talking about what the positive experience of that may be like. So I may not want to do X, but I'm happy to do Y and Z. Yeah. And that would be hot. Yeah. And focusing on those points rather than having a deficit.
Yeah.
Because it can create a bit of a deficit in intimacy.
Yeah, we've been talking about enthusiastic consent, the external kind of expectations that build up in our head, and that can kind of feel like an obligation. And then we've kind of moved into this idea of desire and communicating that. I guess at a minimum, what do you think is super needed around communication around sex?
Yeah. Sometimes some partnerships could come into the space and use the language of we, which is great in some aspects, but when it comes to your own individual needs, really come from a place of I. So this is a need of yours. So talk about it like you need it, because you may need it, right? And speak from that place of, I would really love, or I am needing XYZ, the positive affect of it. And then how would that sound to you? An open discussion, because again, with rather than at. And this comes on the whole theme of consent.
Even before sex, the naked stuff.
Yeah.
Even before that, I think lots of partners, there's a different need in the build-up.
Yeah.
That might be kind of emotional connection. It might be warming up the embers in terms of being flirty or warming up. Any others come to your mind in terms of the before? Yeah,
I mean, you're talking there about responsive desire and arousal there. Yeah. So how my eggs kind of in a row there, so that my body's able to respond in this way, and my brain and body are able to sit in this experience. So am I needing to be wined and dined, or am I needing quality time without any technology, but then I feel connected to my person? Am I needing something where we do something novel in the day that we haven't done before? Otherwise, if it feels like I'm following routine, does my body close off? Or if it feels like that there's no kind of date night here, do I feel like, you know what, I'm not actually excited for what may come?
What about, I guess, the other side of one partner being very firm on the need for sex, whereas the other partner, it might not be as much of a need, or their sex drive might be less? I wonder how you sit with that kind of dynamic.
So, good question, because I always ask, is it sex? Is the need actually sex? What are you needing here? So, first off, what is sex for that person? Okay, so you have this need for sex. Tell me about that. They may describe their need. And as we're unpacking and pulling more of the threads out, I kind of reflect back, and a lot of the times it's actually just a need for connection, or it's a need to feel safe around the person, because perhaps their experience has been sex has been safety. And so what are you actually asking for here? Are you asking for sex, or are you asking for safety? Or are you asking for connection? So it's quite important to really differentiate what it is being actually asked of the person.
Because I think you're tapping into maybe underlying ingredients or needs that really are emotional. And often certain people see sex and that kind of connection point as the true connection or the deep connection. And if they haven't had other examples or other forms of connection emotionally, they keep jumping or wanting to jump over here.
That's right. They keep wanting to go in that corner, because that's all and no wonder, that's all they've ever known. And so to have this new experience, that may be quite frightening.
Because being vulnerable outside of that or communicating often might not feel safe, or you don't have a recipe to follow there.
That's right.
And that is kind of pushed away.
Exactly. I don't have the blueprint. I don't know what to do other than let's be intimate.
So I guess what we're hinting at, and we're going to, I guess, blow people's minds again, is, tell me if I'm wrong, 90 to 95% of things underneath sex is emotions, vulnerability, deeper stuff. It's not just about sex.
I don't have the stats, but, I would say that, for a lot of folk, particularly that come into my space, sex is quite an emotive experience. It's how they connect with other people. For some others that come in this space, it's purely something that is physical, or it's something that they're not even interested in doing with their partner. But it is an emotive experience most of the time from what I hear in my space. And there's underlying needs to it as to why.
And part of the issue might be around what we just said, in not being able to communicate with emotions and stuff with our partner. But also in sex, if you have this rigid blueprint of what you need to do, are you really connecting? Are you actually in your body rather than being in your head at that time?
And I would say that, it's a way that perhaps someone moves away from their internal experience as well. And it can be quite a gendered thing too, because, for some penis owners, not taught or not kind of shown how to sit internally and with their emotional experiences. And so it can be quite a cognitive process of, I need to do X, Y, Z, because that's how I make someone feel loved.
Yep.
right? And it's kind of task-based rather than emotive-based, which is vulnerability and open conversation. And that's quite difficult if you haven't been shown that blueprint before.
Mm-hmm. We like our rabbit holes, Daniel, but I think it's all relevant, and I think that the absence of going there and talking about it is part of this wider problem of this is difficult to talk about. Because maybe I might upset my partner, or I don't want them to feel bad or guilty or shamed. But also for us too, there's a risk, there's a vulnerable factor here of sharing how you really feel.
Because it comes at a cost. And there's anxiety around that because we don't know what that cost would be. It could either further connection or it could cause a wedge. And you may get a reaction that distances yourself from your partner.
Yeah, the interesting thing is there's so many clients that come to me where certain topics haven't even been raised because it's been this obligation thing, or they know their partner's not going to react well. Like the idea of having a baby, I know it's a spin-off, but people don't talk about it either because they know the partner's going to say, no, I don't want kids, and they don't want to have that conversation and maybe break up, or they don't feel solid yet on their answer. So going there too might cause issues.
But it also leaves it feeling quite stagnant.
Yeah.
And what is that like, sitting in this limbo?
We all have needs, and allowing that space is step one, right?
Yeah.
We all have needs. Needs are okay. It might not look like the media, but we need to tap into that. And then once we start shedding those expectations that are built up first, because that's then influences or kind of builds shame and obligation, then there's more space for desire, there's more space for interest, and then more space for you engaging with someone else authentically.
That's right. And just building space.
Yeah.
And for what emerges.
Yeah.
Just trying something different and not following perhaps a rigidness around it.
And then what if there is this big difference in interests, and I have this, you have that, and they don't gel?
Great question. So, I try and differentiate. So there's different sexual interests, which is common because you're not the same person. Let's identify what is a want, because a want is I could live in this relationship without this, and what is a need, and what is the extent of that need? Can I get met in that need, and is that sufficient? Because there's a lot of folk that practice kink and fetish that some kinks and fetishes are need, whilst others are wants. They could live without. So really kind of identifying what that disparity is. But then if that other person doesn't share that need to the extent of which the person is wanting or needing there, what does that actually look like then moving forward? How would you feel in this relationship knowing that
was absent?
Yeah. And it's a hard conversation.
Totally, because you're identifying gaps.
Yeah.
And gaps with someone that you really care about, love. Yeah. And by the way, we haven't really structured this on a monogamous relationship or open poly relationship.
This applies relationally.
Yeah, but knowing the gap can create that anxiety or worry of where to from here.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, though, you have to jump on big decisions and the relationship there.
No.
It's just that further pondering of, what do you think about this gap?
Yeah. And sitting and just reflecting on it, because, sometimes in therapy as well, some folk may feel like they need to provide an answer then and then. And I say, well, we're just talking about this, you may need to sit and simmer in that for a little bit and see what comes up for you, because the answer you have today might be a little bit different tomorrow or the day after.
And it doesn't set up a new obligation or requirement to say, yes, I have to do this. My partner needs this. Like, again, enthusiastic consent. This is why we started with this. Yes. Right? Is
full circle.
Absolutely. Is all parties need to be keen in what's playing out.
Yes. And if we're not, then that's something to, as you mentioned, then ponder. It doesn't need to mean that the relationship is over per se, but what is the connection there?
And yeah, that person might sit with that need or that want, and then there might be some yuckiness that they feel, or things around that, or a perception of that thing that feels gross. Could that be unpacked?
Yeah.
In a safe way again.
Yes.
You know,
in a safe space.
Exactly. So we all come wired with perceptions, history, trauma.
Yes.
And that space of my partner sharing a vulnerable thing that they need, I'm over here hearing that and having a certain perception or bubblings need to be explored. And through that exploration, it might change things, it might not, but you need to give your partner that chance.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need to, I guess, create that space of curiosity for it to be explored between whoever's involved in the partnership.
I'm trying to tap into what a viewer would be thinking and feeling right now. And there's a lot to have space for or build space for. And that takes a lot of time, especially if you've never done it.
Yeah. And I'd also want to put out there that it also is quite important that you know yourself.
Yep.
Before you actually perhaps ask of a partner for exploration as well. So, there's some folk that don't enjoy self-pleasure, but it can make it hard then in terms of understanding what type of touch they may like. And so can there be open curiosity around that? And, there's some scenarios where partners may watch each other self-pleasure. And that's quite an erotic experience as they're kind of being guided in terms of, this is how I like to touch myself.
I wonder what you say to couples or partners that have never explored touch as an idea.
Yeah. I mean, I always ask in terms of what is their experience of that. So, for some folk, and I work with a lot of neurodiverse folk, there's overstimulation on that, or there's just a tactile sensory aspect to it. For others, it's the sense around, I don't like the way my vulva looks, or I don't like the way that my penis looks. I get that for both penis owners and vulva owners there. So can we what is it like just looking at ourselves naked? Now, I give certain exercises for certain folk just to catering to their needs as to what the challenge is there. I got beautiful exercises where, what's it like just being with? Because when you talk about penis owners and being erect, right, most of the time that as a penis owner, we're not erect. And what's it like just being with it and showing it appreciation, being with you through a lot. You spend a lot more time with it not erect than you have erect.
And I think there's definitely another spin-off there around people with body dysmorphia or beautiful trans or queer peeps that have a difficult relationship with their body.
That's right.
Their body is changing through transition, or there's a real need of change. Yeah, it's a complex, and a lot of trauma overlaps here with some people.
Yeah, particularly as you mentioned for beautiful trans or queer folk that may not identify.
Yeah.
And it may feel like it's this foreign thing on their body. So yeah, understandably so.
So there's so many different layers to sex, desire, need. And this kind of content wasn't created to push people in any way or force an idea that everyone has to have sex or everyone has to even engage with sex.
No.
It's an open exploration of issues related to expectations and desire, opening up the doors of concepts around consent, concepts around issues of obligation, expectation, and then trying to carve out what we need and what we want to feel connected and feel safe.
And the difference between that, needs and wants.
Yeah.
Because needs are very different to wants.
I think this is really cool, and I'm so proud of being part of an organization that goes there.
Yeah.
And I really want to thank you for going there, because you go to those spaces and you help people in a safe way explore the yuck.
Yeah.
But underneath that, sometimes there's a lot of beauty, or there's a lot of beauty in connection that I think you do amazing work around.
Thanks, Stu.
Yeah. So thank you for your time.
Thanks.
And if you are wanting to come see Daniel or anyone here at Safe Place Therapy around connecting with desire, connecting with your needs, Safe Place Therapy will continue to be your safe place to talk. But get yourself thinking. What do you need? What do you want? And what helps you stay safe? And please take care. Bye for now.